Welcome to Business Amplified with host Kevin A. Dunlap.
This podcast is for small business owners aiming to amplify their enterprises.
Explore strategies to play a bigger game by becoming an author, public speaker, podcast host, or expanding your brand in other ways.
Elevate your business on Business Amplified.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Business Amplified. Today, we have somebody from our own backyard. I mean, we've had about 36 shows so far. We've been all over the world. We have yet to have anybody from North Carolina. So I'm very anxious to hear what this lady has to say. So, Melissa, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me on. And I'm really excited about being and supporting a fellow North Carolinian as well, because I think North Carolina is a great state to live in. I was born and raised here. So I absolutely love this state, and I'm glad I'm able to help you out as well and to share our love of North Carolina.
Yes, and the things, I'm not from North Carolina. I've been living here about 2 years. However, about 20 years ago, I did live in the Wilmington area, which is coastal North Carolina, as well as the capital city of Raleigh back in 1999, which was back with the last time I had a full-time corporate America job where I was working on something known as Y2K. So I'm glad to be back in North Carolina. And again, Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, Melissa, the question I always ask my guests is essentially the same question as Doc. It is, who are you? What is that you do, and why is it that you do it?
Who am I? That is a very good question. First and foremost, I'm a wife and a mom. I always say that first because that is like part of who I am. That is what I'm most proudest of. I'm a wife to my husband of over 30 years. He's a native of Mexico, so we have a very multicultural family. I have 3 amazing daughters. They're all young adults now. I have a wonderful son in love. I don't call him my son-in-law. And then we have an adopted, I call him my adopted. He was one of my daughter's 8th grade boyfriends that just kind of, the middle daughter's 8th grade boyfriend that just kind of stuck around. So he became our adopted son and his wife, and they're part of my family and part of my heart. So I consider them my family as well. I used to be an elementary school teacher, but in 2014, when a lot of things happened in my life, I kind of went to the solo entrepreneurial job. I started blogging, and in the course of doing a blog, I started a podcast. I'm actually talking to you from my blog cabin, which is I always dreamed of having an office outside of my home, and it's like 50 feet outside of my home. I always thought that my office would be like somewhere where I would get in the car and drive and go to work, but no, this happened to be like this. But it came from everything that I worked and everything I made through blogging. I was able to buy this office and do everything inside of it. I also coach blogging classes as well. I do a DIY show. I did 10 episodes for Market.live, and now I'm doing on my own on YouTube, as well as my podcast, Chats in the Blog Cabin. So that's me in a nutshell.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because one of the things, the whole reason that I created the Business Amplified podcast is that for a small business owner, for them to grow, they need to be able and willing to do something different. And I don't care what that different thing is. And sometimes it's going to be starting your own podcast, or as you were saying, they're also writing a blog or creating a YouTube channel. Because one of the things about growing a small business, at least in the very beginning, is that is one of the things I've been saying since 2009, is that your face is your brand. Mm-hmm. And you have to get yourself out there in order to put your face out there. And then when people see your face and they enjoy your content, then they create this thing, this whole know, like, and trust. Now, you may not know who they are, but if they're following you, they're going to know, like, and trust you, and then be willing to invest into whatever solution that you're going to maybe providing, like you were saying, helping somebody to start or maintain a blog.
Yeah, for sure. And that was my biggest obstacle too. And when I started blogging and when I started the Chats in the Blog Cabin podcast, it started out through a mindset challenge. I was in a challenge during COVID, and they said, go on live and talk about one of your core values. And one of my core values is relationships. I love being around people. I love encouraging people. I'm your biggest cheerleader if you're going to do something, but yet for me, I could never cheer myself on. And so I was like, okay, my mindset coach said, okay, go live. And I'm like, no, I hate get me in front of a bunch of school kids all day long. I could be 100% comfortable up there, could talk off the top of my head. Get me in front of a bunch of my peers. Like right now, I could not have been able to do this podcast interview with you. I would have been so anxious, so nervous. I would not have been able to even articulate what I was saying. I would have been 1,000 miles a minute talking. But yeah, I went on and I said, okay, if I'm going live, I'm going to bring a friend on. And it happened to be relationships is one of my core values. So I brought a friend on. I really enjoyed talking to her. I enjoyed the feedback that I got because I actually did it live. And that's how Chats on the Blog Cabin started. And it was like, okay, now I have this bug. Now I want to put it out there to the world. And I have interviewed so many amazing people. I've interviewed a lot of the Real Housewives. I've interviewed the wife of the director of the movie Frozen. I interviewed a couple of actresses, some of the people that have been on Broadway. I mean, just a lot of different people that I never would have been able to have that opportunity. So definitely getting out of your comfort zone is huge, huge for any type of business.
Well, and that is definitely true because the thing is, you may be nervous, you may be hesitant, you may be, whatever it is that you may be. But the thing is, that's the way that people are going to recognize you is you get out there. I mean, you can go run to TV ads, you can run radio ads, I don't know, Google ads or Facebook, that kind of stuff. And maybe you got a still image that gets whatever enhanced so that you look good in that advertisement. But the way to really attract people, in my opinion, is to be out there in the world where people see you. And I know Melissa has not heard this story unless you've heard some of our other podcasts. I have shared this on previous shows. In October 2009, I attended a real estate investors event, and I don't know if it was San Diego or LA or whatever. I was living in Vegas at that time, and they were giving away two door prizes, two raffle prizes, and there's maybe 400, maybe 500 people in the audience, and I won one of the raffle prizes, and that one little prize that I won was at that time was like a $300 or $400 device. And right now you can probably get it for $15. Even if they're still making it, I have no idea. But that item that I won completely changed my business. It made me hundreds of thousands of dollars because of that one little device. And Melissa, I'll share with you what the device is. Is most of the people that are experiencing this broadcast it's going to be mainly hearing it through their ears, not watching us on YouTube. So I get that. However, the one device that I won was a flip camcorder back in 2009. Now, for those of you that don't know what a flip camcorder is, it was basically, because this was before smartphones, it was a camcorder that you could fit in your pocket or pocketbook. It was the size like a little bit larger than the size of a carton or a pack of cigarettes. So that's about how big it was. It had a little device that would plug into your USB port of your computer, and it would record up to 1 hour of video. Now, that could be 6 10-minute videos, 160-minute videos, 230, 450. It doesn't matter. It had the capacity to record 1 hour of video. What I started doing at that time is I had to step outside my comfort zone. And I was doing lease option real estate at the time. So I had a lot of homes that were lease option available. However, I started thinking like, hey, I probably need to film these properties. So let me stand in front of the camera, talk into the camera, and let's start introducing that house. That's when I started. It was about a year later when I fully realized that my face was my brand, and I would put out all of these YouTube videos of all of these different houses on my website that I was using to market those houses. And over time, let's say if Melissa, she's watching the videos, I don't know who she is. She might be on my mailing list. She is, and she's just another name on the list, but I've never met her. I don't know who she is. And she started watching my videos. And she watched this one. She watched the second one, the third one, the 12th one, the 13th one, the 15th video over the course of, say, 1 or 2 months. And then I'm listening and say, hey, I'm ready to step up and move forward. And she would give me a call, say, hey, Kevin, can I take a look at these 3 houses? This is 10 o'clock in the morning. She wants to look at them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she's writing me a check for $15,000, for the option payment on that particular home. And the reason she was willing to do that was because she kept seeing my content. She kept seeing my face. And that is what made her have that buying decision. Now, let's look at it from my perspective. When I was shooting those videos, I was nervous. And I'll tell you this. When I was, because my videos had three parts to it. It had the introduction, which I say, this is how I introduce the house. So I'm standing in front of the camera. I go, hey, everybody, this is Kevin Dunlap with Trident Investments Group. Today we're at 123 Main Street. This is blah, blah, blah. I go, the address, the details of the house, the cross streets and stuff like that. I would then shoot the third part of the video, which usually I just change my background a little bit. Like, I'll flip it around or go to the kitchen or whatever. And I would shoot the videos. Well, thank you for taking a look at 123 Main Street for more about this house or any of our house. And I was given my contact information. Then I would shoot the second part, which was the narrated tour of walking through the house. And I did hundreds, if not probably close to 1,000 of those videos. And I will tell you this, even on my 1,000th video, I was still making mistakes every single time. I'll do my introduction. Hey, everybody, this is 123 Main Street. This is, this house is located on, what street was that again? Oh, Jones and Alexander. Okay, hello, everybody. And I would shoot take after take after take. And even on the 1,000th time, I mean, I still had the nerves in my stomach, but the thing is, I started getting used to it and started being in front of the camera. And I was going to say, and I know I'm going a little long-winded here, but the thing is, just start shooting those the videos. Get your name out there. And by the way, you're going to make mistakes. If you're live, it's going to be even more profound. Big deal. So what? People do that. And what that led to was when I started to join a Toastmasters group in Las Vegas, when I was doing my icebreaker, which they're usually the first talk that you give at a Toastmasters group, I not only did I was standing in front of say 15, 20 people, but I did that as a Facebook Live. So now I had the whole world being able to watch me.
Woo!
So the thing is, one of the thing is that when you're starting doing the blogging, the podcast, the videos and stuff like this, is you have to start to become okay with being uncomfortable. As I call it, you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Would you agree with that, Melissa?
I 100% agree with that. And, looking back now, being in that box, I don't think I lived my life the way I should have lived in my life. And once I got out of my comfort zone, that saying life begins outside your comfort zone, that is so true, because I have more joy, more fulfillment now since I've stepped out of that comfort zone. I have a love of life, a zest for travel, a zest for trying new things, even though I'm scared and anxious about doing them. I now, whenever an opportunity approaches, I think about it for a minute and then say, why not? And try it out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I never want to live where I have regrets, where I look back at my life and say, I regret not doing this. I regret not doing that. Or that opportunity came. Why didn't I take it?
Well, and that's I think is a big thing with a lot of people, not even small business owners, but just a lot of people in general, is that they may be lying on their deathbed and they say, I should have or would have or could or I should have would have could have done that, or I wish I would have done that back when I was 20 years old. The thing is, you have to start taking action now in order for you to be able to achieve the successes, regardless of what it is. I don't care if it's financial, personal, getting married, whatever your goal is, you have to start doing something different in order to get the results that you really want.
That is so true. And don't get discouraged, because sometimes slow growth is better than fast growth, because if you take off really fast, eventually you're going to come down, you're going to crash. Whereas if you go very slow, then you see the growth and you can look back like maybe 10 years from now and say, oh my gosh, look how much I've grown. Whereas if you did really quick, then if you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm not growing anymore, what's going on? And then you get discouraged and then you give up. So slow growth for me is better.
There's a book out there that I've read. I don't know Melissa, if you've read it. I do talk about it every once in a while. It's called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And essentially what Darren says in that book is like, all you have to do is make one minute change and be consistent with that. And over time, yes, maybe let's just look at a you got a line and then you got a little bit of a line that's going off just at a 1 degree angle. However, over the course of say time, let's say, as time goes further, that angle is going to keep getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. And the thing is, by doing that, she's talking about having slow growth. Over time, that growth is going to compound into something very large. Instead of trying to do one thing really, really big, and then, as she was saying, you may end up crashing and burning at a later time.
Yeah, for 100%, because you can get discouraged if you see you've grown really fast and then all of a sudden you stop and you're stunned and you're like, okay, what am I going to do next? And everything you're doing, you're like, you're pushing up against a wall and you just can't go and you can't move and you can't move forward and your brain just starts shutting down. Whereas the slow growth, you're doing little steps and you can look back and say, oh my gosh, look at this. Like when I do with my blogging clients, I tell them, you look at my blog right now and you can see what it looks like right now, but I'm going to pull up a page when I first started, and I can go back in this called a Wayback Machine and show them what it looks like at the very beginning. I said, do you see the way it looked then? So you're comparing your blog when you're first starting out to what mine looks now. And I started mine back in 2010, 2011, and they're just starting theirs now and they're thinking they're supposed to look like mine. I'm like, it's not. Look at the growth. Look at how it looked back in 2010 and look at 2024, and you can see the change it took for it. And it came through different themes, different outlines, different everything, and my writing style has changed. Everything has changed. So you refine your skills over time. And I think that's the most important thing is when you're a small business owner, you cannot stop learning. You have to keep that learning up, whether it's taking an online course, doing a webinar, going to a conference, going to hear someone speak. You always have to engage and learn about something new. I try to make it so that in my little part of the world that I try to either do an online course or a conference once a month so that I have something that's engaging me, whether it's an interview that I'm doing on a podcast or something else, something that's engaging my mind so that I'm continuing to think forward and forward thinking instead of backward thinking. Because sometimes we, as a small business owner, we can get lost in our own thoughts and we think, oh, well, that business is growing. Why isn't mine growing? And that imposter syndrome comes in and we're like, well, why are we even doing this? And we start getting down on ourselves, which of course we start not putting our best foot forward in our business as well.
Right. And the thing is, and for those of you that don't know this or have not realized this as of yet, most people, especially when they're just starting out, I know I'm a victim. I cannot say Melissa is or not. I'm assuming she probably will say yes, is that most of us all do suffer at some point in time from the imposter syndrome, where it's like, I'm not good enough. Why would somebody want to hire me?
Yep, 100%. And when something goes wrong, you're like, well, of course that they didn't want to continue the contract because why would they? And then you start all these spiraling down where you have to stop and you have to give yourself grace and feel the feelings, but then say, okay, enough. Let's move on. That door is closed. Another one's coming and another one's opening. And you got to look forward instead of backwards.
Right, right. And the thing is to give yourself credit.
Yep.
I mean, the thing is, you have achieved certain levels of success already, and there's other people that are going to dream that they had the level of success that you already have.
100%. I think there was a quote, and I can't remember exactly what the quote is. It's about failure, and it's like failure is not the absence of trying. It's just that you didn't try enough. You know what I'm saying is like failure doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that attempt to do it didn't work, but maybe later on that attempt's going to work. So you just got to keep trying and you got to keep trudging through what you're supposed to do.
Well, and this is true with anything. I mean, I forget what's the actual magic number is, but the whole idea of Edison and the light bulb. And his thing about like either he tried it 1,000 times or 10,000 times. Well, this is just say he tried it 1,000. Let's keep the number small. It's probably bigger than that, but that means let's assume that is correct. So on his 1,000th attempt to have the incandescent light bulb, but that meant that he had 999 failures before that.
Yep, 100%. I agree with you. And just think about the Wright brothers, because we're in North Carolina, and the first in flight and them getting the airplane. How many times did it take them to how many models of the airplane did they actually go through? You know, you have to think about that. All we see is the finished project. We don't see the work that goes into it unless we actually sit down and read a biography about it or look at a documentary about it. Most of the time, we're always focused on the finished project instead of the work in progress, which is where the learning actually becomes for us as entrepreneurs, is where we learn the most, is when we look at the end process instead of the finished product.
Yeah, exactly, because if you go to Kitty Hawk, which is in the area known as the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and I was there about a year and a half ago, and I went to the Wright Brothers Museum. I even went to the place where they were doing the launch of the vehicle, or on the mound that they launched, what they called a kite at that time, because it was a kite was just something that was suspended in air. And they built two sheds on there, and they were there for several years before they finally had successful on that first successful flight, which they did four flights on that day. Now, Orville, I think, went first, Wilbur went second, Orville went third, and Wilbur went fourth, or vice versa. I forget which order, but they did do it like first, second, third, fourth. And the first flight only went so far. The second flight went a little bit further. The third flight went a little bit further. The fourth one went a lot further. And it was that all that effort in building up, in order to achieve that success. But the thing is, they were diligent about not giving up.
Yeah, I'm sure
Actually,
there.
they had healthy competition.
Yeah.
Samuel Pierpont Langley was trying to become the first motorized flight. Now, the thing is, going off of that, I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But anyway, the thing is, anybody's great levels of success is going to go through quite a lot of trials and tribulations before they get to where they want to go. Just because you didn't get it on the first try or the second try does not mean that you need to give up.
Exactly. And I'm sure the Wright brothers at one point in time were like, okay, I'm just going to junk this. And they probably had moments where they were like, okay, I just cannot do this. And I'm sure either one of them encouraged the other or the other one encouraged the other. And I'm sure they both had times. Thank God they didn't have times where they were together and they had that, or we would not have airplanes, or we probably would, but it would be later on. But just think about, the best thing about having, when you're going through something like that, is when you have someone in your corner that's encouraging you to say, hey, yes, you can do this. And that's important, that we, even as a business entrepreneur, that you have your tribe that kind of like helps you and kind of pushes you forward as well. Someone that you can go to and say, hey, I have a problem. And someone that's maybe a little bit more knowledgeable than you. Never be afraid to ask questions out in the business world. There's a lot of business owners that are willing to help lift up the ones that are coming up. There are some that aren't. So you've got to find the ones that want to lift you up, and they want to help you, and they want to actually give you feedback and tell you what you might be doing wrong, what you might be doing right, or either that, just sit there and listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, and that is so true, because one of the things I do suggest all business owners have is, number one, an accountability partner. So that's somebody that you could turn to for, hey, to hold you accountable, and vice versa. And then the second thing I would strongly suggest everybody do is to join a mastermind, some kind of mastermind. It doesn't matter if it's in person or if it's virtual, but having a group of other people who can give you ideas, that is, hey, I have this idea that I would do this one thing, and somebody else in the mastermind says, I've tried that it doesn't work because of this or that. And the things that, I mean, I used to belong to masterminds when I lived in Vegas, and they were very, very helpful. And if you're doubting masterminds, one of the first things I would say is go read the book Think and Grow Rich. And I think like the 11th or whatever, one of the later things that Napoleon Hill talks about in that book is to be part of a mastermind. So you need to be around other like-minded people so that you can not only learn from what they're going through, but also where you can get ideas that are people from outside of your brain to give you ideas that, hey, it will work this way or that way, or here's an idea that you probably never even thought about.
Yeah, 100%. Because that was one of the biggest thing with the growth for me for the Chats on the Block Cabin, was I was in a mastermind at the time, and they were like, well, what if you did this? And I'm like, well, you know what? I had never thought about doing that way. So 100%. And the actual name of Chats on the Block Cabin actually came back because I had some of my amazing friends and encouragers come in, and right before we sealed up the walls of the blog cabin, I'm write encouraging words, and one of my friends wrote blog cabin. Well, in the mastermind, one of the ladies came up with chats from the blog cabin, and it just kind of stuck. And I was like, oh, I love that. And I was like struggling with a name for the podcast. And then here she goes, right off the top of her head. And I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But then I was so thankful that I was in that mastermind, because they're answer to my question right there. So sometimes you can go to a mastermind with something that you're struggling with, that you may have like a brain freeze, that you're like, you can't see the forest for the trees. And so you're like, okay, I'm stuck in the middle. I'm in the mire. I can't see. I can't understand what's going on. I can't concept. I know what I'm looking for, but I can't vocalize it. I can't put it into words. And then somebody can just pop it right out for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's because you can learn a lot more from a group of people that are in a similar, let's say, travel or experience or path that you're on, and to come up with ideas that you never have thought of. I mean, I know for me, when I was, like, say, back in the days when I was in college, one of the things I was very adamant about, that anytime I wrote a term paper or whatever, any kind of paper for, let's say, an English class, is always got together with somebody. I said, hey, you read mine, I'll read yours, and we'll critique each other. And I even learned that when I was writing my second book, second, third, and fourth book, is to have either a content editor or somebody else to read, because maybe what I'm trying to get out there is not going to be understood. And I'm taking things for granted in my own brain because I know what I mean by that. But Melissa may say, "What the heck do you mean by this?" I have no idea what you're trying to say here.
And I just had that conversation yesterday with an editor. It's like, when we write something in our mind, we know what we're saying, and we're typing so fast that sometimes we may miss words or two. But when we're reading it, it's like, oh, we don't see the missing words, because in our mind, we know what it's supposed to say. So having that second pair of eyes on anything, as far as business or anything else, helps us to not only get our message out better to the world, but also helps us to kind of refine our message as well.
This makes me think of when I was writing my second book, and I had a content editor editing the book, and I was talking about one of my experiences when I was in the Navy, and more specifically, I was in a town known as Kamakura, Japan, which is close to Tokyo, and I talked about going inside the big Buddha. And my content editor he wrote me back, he goes, "It sounds like you went inside this Buddha," like, and that's what I was talking about. He goes. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I meant by that. There was a 3-story Buddha that you can go inside of. And he was like, I had no idea you could do something like that. Because when he was reading it, he was looking at it from a different perspective, what I just took for granted because I had been there.
Been there, yeah. That would have led me to Google the big Buddha in Japan to see what it looked like.
I think it's called either the giant Buddha or the great Buddha, but it is in Kamakura, Japan, which is the city of temples. So it's kind of like somebody going inside the Statue of Liberty. So how can you go inside of a statue? Like, well, the statue's pretty big. Yeah. Melissa, this is a question I usually like to ask our guests right around this time in the show. Could you share with us a little bit about some of your biggest challenges, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Biggest challenges, imposter syndrome is what we talked about earlier. That is huge. Honestly, giving myself grace, saying, and it wasn't until the last few years that I actually decided that I needed to get over myself and get over the imposter syndrome. Not that I don't battle with it still, but I give myself grace. I feel the feelings, but then I'm like, okay, I felt it. Now I got to get up and go do something. Whether it's doing a podcast, editing a podcast episode, writing something, or just researching a topic for the blog, or just, doing a reel or something, just something creative that gets me out of my own mind, then that helps out a lot. Because I think as business owners, we get so caught up in the day-to-day stuff. Like me, I know my strong point is not the accounting side of it, but I know I have to do it. So I was like, okay, I'll put out a little bit each day and work a little bit each day on the accounting part. And at the end of the month, it's not so hard. Whereas I used to wait until the end of the year to do all accounting, and then I would get so bogged down. But now I know there's strategies in place. So the imposter syndrome, finding what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are, and trying to help so that my weaknesses, like I said, the accounting part of the business, so that I don't feel so bogged down when it comes down to make it a huge job, just making it little tiny pieces of stuff, little bites, as opposed to making the whole big pie at one time. Because at taxes are always stressful anyways, and being a small business owner, you have to do taxes, and so you're like, okay, oh, I have to do this. Why do I have to do this? Why does the government want my money? And then you go, and everything starts raging, and then you get so frustrated that you kind of get shut down. So instead, you just do it a little bit at a time. So at the end of the year, or when you go to file your taxes, everything's there. All your deductions are there. Everything's there. So little small pieces. Another one is people not really knowing what I do. I mean, honestly, when you say blogger, people are like, oh, so you get stuff for free. No, I work for things that I get. And it's still, to this day, there's still members of my family that I grew up with that still don't understand what I'm doing. And I'm like, I write for a living. People pay me to write for them. People pay me to review their art, to review their stuff. People pay me for a podcast. I mean, people pay me for all these different things. They have commercials they come on for me, everything people pay me for. But people just don't understand it. They think because I work from home and I work for myself that I have all this free time in the world. And I don't, because I think as well, you don't have free time. You don't have paid time off. You don't have PTO. You're the business owner. You have to do it basically all. And yeah, there are things that you can kind of farm out to other people, like virtual assistants and other things. But you are the one that's responsible for whether or not your business is a success or not. So that kind of lands on your shoulders. So sometimes you have to have boundaries. And that was hard for me in the beginning, is having boundaries of doing everything for my family and then turning around and trying to do everything for the business. But now I realized, hey, there's some things I'm good at and there's some things I'm not good at. So farming things out that you're not good at, and kind of putting those boundaries in place so that you safeguard your own peace of mind and safeguard your business hours. I used to work all the time, but now I'm like, nope, on the weekends, nope, shut down. If you're contacting me on the weekends, you'll get a reply on Monday, unless I just happen to be on my computer. But most of the time I'm not. That's family time.
Well, that's a good thing that you said that, is because as business owners are just starting out, they may be able to take weekends off, they may not. I mean, it all depends on what kind of business that you're running. But the thing is, one of the things I'm very that I strongly harp on is having, say, a Google Calendar and schedule your personal time onto your calendar, especially if you're opening up your calendar to other people with a calendar link, so that you don't double schedule yourself. When I was in real estate in Las Vegas, I worked weekends because I dealt with a lot of people that had day jobs Monday through Friday. So Saturday and Sundays was my primo time. However, again, I worked in Vegas. This also meant that I dealt with a lot of people who worked in the service industry, which means they usually worked nights. So I had to be able to be available during the day. One thing I realized pretty early on is that if somebody else has access to my calendar, is that I do have to make sure that I schedule my own personal time in there. Hey, I want to go take this yoga class, and it's going to be on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. 3 to 4 p.m. I say, okay, so I'm booked between 3:30 and 4:30 because I have to account for my drive time or taking a shower or something, or whatever. But yeah, I can meet you at 5 o'clock. Even if they don't have access to my calendar, and I'm just say, hey, Melissa, I'm going to show you these three houses. I can meet you there. I'll meet you at house A at 5 o'clock, and I will schedule 5 to 6:30 or 5 to 7 o'clock to go show those houses. So it's to make sure that you keep, in my opinion, keep a good calendar and make sure that you do schedule your own time onto your calendar, and treat that time. Let's say if I was going to go do that yoga class at 3 o'clock, and Melissa said, hey, I can't meet you at 5, I have to meet you at 3, then I can make the conscious decision, okay, do I take a later class, or do I treat the appointment that I had with myself as if it was an appointment with another client?
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And it's important that, yes, you take time for yourself, because you can't pour from an empty pot. You can get so burned out that you're not, number one, you're not giving yourself the best you can be, but you're also not giving your clients the best you. And you're also, when you're doing that, your clients, you're going to come to them and you're going to be so stressed out and so burned out. And you're like, oh, why do I have to meet with this client? Or maybe somebody's cut you off in traffic on your way to the client and you're just so revved up that when you meet them, you're not giving off your greatest impression because you're so stressed out. So it's important to take that time for self-care, to make time for yourself as a priority. I mean, I literally just started getting a facial, and it's so relaxing just to be able to sit down and just get in the massage and everything, and the music and everything. It's so soothing. And I just started doing that back in August, but it's made the hugest difference in how I approach my business, because I normally schedule it at the end of the day so that I know that I don't have to go back in and don't have to go back to work. And I'm just like so relaxed. So the next morning when I get up, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to start the day fresh, and I'm ready, and it's good. And then the following month, the same thing comes around. I'm like, oh gosh, I really need this. I'm so glad it's coming up. And then once again, you recharge yourself. You have to take that time to recharge yourself, because if you don't, you're not giving your best you to the world and to your clients.
And then directly, how I interpreted what she just said is you definitely got to reward yourself for the hard work that you do. Because like you said, you need to be able to recharge yourself. You need to be able to be your best you. And to do something like that, find something that will help you give yourself a reward. It could be a facial, could be a manicure or pedicure, could be a massage. It could be going to the movies or taking your spouse or loved one out to a nice restaurant. You know, whatever it is that you can do to reward yourself. That way, when you're doing the hard work, you know what? Hey, on Friday at the end of the month, I'm going to be taking my family out to Red Lobster, you know, or whatever. You know, it doesn't. The restaurant doesn't really matter. But you know how, you know, and that makes the work that you're doing, even the times that we are finding it difficult, makes it more rewarding, because you know you're going to get a nice little a pick me up at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the day, you know, whatever your reward schedule is going to be involved in.
Yes, 100%. I totally agree, because it's so refreshing. It could be whatever. It could be even taking a walk, or taking a bike ride, or taking your dog, or just playing with your dog. It just, you have to find that one thing that really refreshes you. And it doesn't have, you don't have to do that same thing every single solitary month. You just have to find something that refreshes you. Maybe it's going out and trying a new skill. Maybe it's something like taking a cooking class excites you, or learning something new excites you. You have to find that one thing that's going to refresh and kind of get that brain flowing and just your imagination going. And then that's where everything flows from there.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Melissa. Now, if somebody wanted to talk to you more, possibly have you write their blog, you know, or learn more about, you know, what is it that you do? Do you have a landing page, a calendar link, a website link, social media? How can they find you, or how can they get a hold of you?
Probably the best way to get a hold of me, because I'm more active on Instagram than I am on any other social media, is at Frugal Mom. It's FRUGAL Mom, at Frugal Mom, on Instagram. Or you can go to my website. It's adventuresfrugalmom.com. And they can just like send me an email. There's a contact page on my website. It's under Work With Me, I think. And they can just contact me that way. And if they want to interested in blogging classes, just send me a contact either through the Instagram or through my website, and I can get you a calendar link, because my calendar link is really long. So I can get you one, and we can schedule you in for initial consultation, and then we can go from there.
Okay, well, there you have it. All of that information is going to be down below in the show notes. Now, I also want to say before we say goodbye, I do want to say, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, definitely go ahead and like it, give it a thumbs up. If you think that you would like to be a good guest or a potential guest for the show, go to our website at businessamplified.net/pre-interview. Again, that's businessamplified.net/pre-interview. And that would give you a 15-minute consultation to see if we're going to be a good fit for the show. And if you are, then I will send you the link that would have you do an actual 30 to 45-minute show. Now, before we go, Melissa, is there anything last thing that you want to share with the audience or the viewers or the listeners before we depart?
I would say don't listen to the naysayers. If you believe strongly in what you're doing, that should be your drive. There are a lot of people along the way are like, you doing what? Why are you leaving your job as teaching? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And if I had listened to them, I would be stuck still teaching. Not to say I didn't love teaching, but I have teachers, friends now that are talking about how much of a drain it is to teach. And I'm so glad I got out. I love the kids, but there was so much that teachers are forced to do now that's not teaching. And so if you have someone that's telling you and not believing in you, then maybe that's the person that you should hold at arm's length and put a boundary around when you're trying to start your business. And then they can come back in the fold once the business is started. Because anybody that's not going to believe in you when you start something is not someone that you want to have when you're first starting a business or when you're actively in the business, because you're going to hear them in your ear all the time. And that's going to make the biggest difference in your business, is when you are listening to other people and not listening to your own intuition and your own like gut telling you that this is right. This is what I need to do.
That person could be somebody you even live with. It could be a parent. It could be a child. It could be a brother or a sister. The thing is, you definitely want to be very wary of who you're listening to, and then try to surround yourself with people who are there to support you. Yeah. Now, I learned that many years ago. When I said in 2010, I started taking some personal development courses. In particular, it was through a company called PSI Seminars. And through them, they're all about, being there to support each other. And then in 2015, when I decided, hey, I would like to write a book, and that's when I wrote my book, Lease Options Made Easy, because that's what I did in real estate, was lease option real estate. Back then, a lot of the people that I would be hanging around says, why would you write a book? Why would anybody want to buy a book from you? Why would somebody want to do this? What makes you the expert? If I listened to them, I never would have wrote my first book or my second book or my third book or my fourth book, or have my podcast or have my blogs, or all the things that I'm doing today were all started from that one book. And the thing is, I surrounded myself with somebody that she had just written a book herself, and that was my inspiration to write my first book. So instead of listening to the naysayers, I now say, hey, I'm going to listen to my friend here.
Yep, 100%. I totally agree.
Melissa, I want to say thank you for being on the show today. And and thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
This is my pleasure. And guys, until next time, be amazing.
Thanks for tuning in to another empowering episode of Business Amplified with Kevin A. Dunlap.
If you found value in today's insights, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast.
Keep amplifying your business. And remember, your success journey is our inspiration.
Until next time on Business Amplified, go out there and make your business thrive.